Hello everyone, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Keisha and today I'm going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. Out of all of the videos that I film throughout the year, this is by far one of my favorites to do. I have linked the original creators of this tag in the description box down below in case you want to check out where this tag originated from. It's been around for many years and I have loved doing it each year that I have been on BookTube. Before I get into the 13 questions involved in this tag, I did want to go ahead and say that I have exceeded my first Goodreads goal for the year. I always set my goal at 50 books and then I up it to 75 and then 100. I always kind of have this goal of reading 100 books in a year, but in order to pace myself, I start with 50 and then bump it up. So I have already read at least 50 books and I've actually read 55 at this point in the year. I don't really have any other goals for myself as I've tried to be very lenient on my reading this year and just kind of letting myself read what I want to read. Now I am still setting monthly TBR, so I'm not mood reading as much as I would like. But one thing I will say about myself is I'm very proud of how much I've allowed myself to DNF, because if I'm not liking a book, there are so many other books out there that I really want to get to that I will probably enjoy more. So I've allowed myself to not finish books more this year, which has kind of been crazy. I haven't gone a month yet, except maybe this month. So far so good, but I have not gone a month yet without a DNF. So that is something that I'm doing and will continue to do, and just continuing to try to find my reading taste for this year, because it does tend to change with each year. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the questions for this tag. Question number 1 is, what is the best book that you've read so far this year? And I think this is a really easy answer for me. It didn't take too much thought. There is one book that I feel like has stuck with me since I've read it, and one book that I would love to reread, and I don't reread a lot of books. And it's a book that just made me so happy, so joyful. It's a book that I really got immersed in the story and overall just really loved, and that is My Phony Valentine by Courtney Walsh. So this may or may not come as a surprise to you all, but I love Courtney Walsh's rom-coms, and this series, The Holidays with Heart, is one of my absolute favorites. This first book follows our main character. Her name is Poppy Hart, and she is a baker and a cook. She has her own little restaurant, and one day she is out and about getting some coffee, and she runs into a bully from high school who is still kind of bullying her as an adult. And in the midst of all of this, she is like feigning that this guy next to her is her husband, and it turns out to be Dallas Burke. And Dallas Burke is a famous hockey player for the Chicago Comets, and they end up striking up this whole fake dating situation, and it has benefits for both of them. So that's essentially what this story is about. It is a clean romance, and I really appreciate that, because for the longest time I just couldn't find any books that were clean romances, and so I really love Courtney Walsh and know I can always trust her with that. She also does a really good job of weaving grace and forgiveness into her stories, so I also appreciate that. This is by far one of my favorite books of all time, and so far it's the best book that I've read this year. This is real funny, y'all, because question number 2 is, what is the best sequel you've read so far this year? And I haven't read a ton of sequels, but I had to say My Lucky Charm by Courtney Walsh. So this is more of a companion novel. It is a series, like it's the Holidays with Heart romance series, but they are more considered, I think, companion novels. However, I would highly recommend starting with My Phony Valentine, because I feel like you really get to know the characters more when you spend time with them in My Phony Valentine, and then versus in this book, you kind of get thrown in and you get these characters and you see some of the ones from the first book, but you love them more if you've already spent some time with them. So I would encourage you to read My Phony Valentine before My Lucky Charm, but this one follows our second Heart sister. This one follows our main character, Eloise, which is one of Poppy's sisters. She has 2 sisters, and we will get each of their stories, which I'm so excited about. And in this one, you have this really humiliating breakup situation that takes place at the beginning for Eloise. And then she runs into this guy in this bar. She has a kiss with him on New Year's Eve and thinks she'll never see him again. But he ends up being a new player for the Chicago Comets. And so this is Grayson Hawk, or Gray, and he is a very grumpy character, and Eloise is a very sunshine character. So if you like a good grumpy sunshine story, or a good hockey romance and a clean romance as well, this is a good story for you. Obviously, and I didn't mention this before, but both of these are holiday romances, but I would say that even if you're not reading them around Valentine's Day or St. Patrick's Day, it's still going to be a good time because they're very subtle on those themes. Question number 3 is, what is a new release that you haven't read yet but you want to? And I honestly had trouble thinking of this one because there's not any new releases that I'm really just itching to get to. But one that I have on my shelves is The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. This is a gorgeous copy. I got this from Amazon, but I love that this is so beautiful. I love that there's so many books this year that are getting sprayed edges and stenciling and all that fun stuff. But I am going to be reading this book hopefully this month in June because it is my friend Gwen's Patreon book club pick for the month. So I plan to get to this soon. But I really loved Stuart Turton's first book, The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. And so I'm really hoping to enjoy this one as well. I've heard that it's good for fans of Lost, and it also has some like sci-fi elements tied in with the murder mystery. So I'm really intrigued by this one. And honestly, just in general, I've been more intrigued by mystery books. I don't know if this book came out this year or not, but I think it did. And it is How to Solve Your Own Murder. I'm really intrigued by that one. I don't know if I'll get to it by the end of the year, but if I can, I would love to because I'm really intrigued by that one. And then again, I don't know if this one came out this year or last year. It was probably last year, but The Night in Question is another one that's a mystery that I'd really like to get to. Question number 4 is, what are your most anticipated releases for the second half of the year? So I have quite a few of these. So first, let's talk about what's coming out in July. So Beneath These Cursed Stars by Lexi Ryan is coming out. So last year I read These Hollow Vows and These Twisted Bonds. These books are a duology, a like YA romantasy duology that I really enjoyed. Both of these were 4 stars. And Beneath These Cursed Stars is a companion, I think, to these. It's not part of that series, but I believe it follows the main character's sister in this one. So I don't really remember what it's about, but I know it's in that same world. So if you did read this series and didn't know that this was coming out, definitely check that out. Another book that's coming out in July is The Nightmare Virus by Nadine Brandes. I haven't read anything from this author, but I know that she is a beloved Christian fantasy author. She wrote books like Wistress and Romanov, which again, I haven't read any of, but The Nightmare Virus sounds really interesting to me. It's something about like this mind virus, or like it gets in your dreams. I don't again remember the description for the book, but it sounded really, really good. It's supposed to be like fantasy, sci-fi, dystopian, and I've heard people compare it to a little bit of the Hunger Games, and I can't remember what else it's mixed with, but it sounds really good. So I'm definitely anticipating this one. Moving on to August, another book that I'm really anticipating is a Christian historical romance. It is called Beyond Ivy Walls. I don't remember what this one's about. Again, I don't have these synopses in front of me, but I do remember somebody saying that this is like reminiscent of Beauty and the Beast, but it's not like a fantasy story or anything like that. But I did love Rachel Fordham's other book, The Letter Tree, which I read earlier this year, and so I'm really wanting to read more of her books, and this one sounds really good. Another book coming out in August, and quite possibly the book that I'm most excited for, is Wisteria by Adeline Grace. This is the 3rd book in the Belladonna series, so if you don't know what I'm talking about and you haven't seen these gorgeous covers anywhere, you absolutely need to get your hands on them. This is a YA Gothic romantasy series where you have our main character Signa, and she falls in love with Death himself. I know that sounds a little bit weird, and like, I don't know about this, Keisha. Well, I didn't know about it either, and it was really good. The first book involved like a murder mystery. It has a little bit of Bridgerton vibes. The atmosphere felt very Crimson Peak. What else? Addie LaRue, if you like The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which I did not, but if you liked elements of that book, I think this series would be good for you too. I just absolutely love these books. I love how stunning the covers are, and I'm really excited to read Wisteria. This is going to follow another character versus the character that's been in these two. So I am a little bit nervous about that because I really, really love Signa, but I'm excited to get Blythe's perspective in Wisteria. And last but not least, Courtney Walsh has hinted that the 3rd Holiday with Hearts romance may come out later this year, and I'm really itching to get the next sister story. So I don't know if it's going to come out the end of this year or if it'll get pushed back. I don't even know when or what holiday it's going to involve, but I'm very excited. And if it does get announced, I might even be anticipating that more than the Belladonna series continuation. So that is going to be the last one. Question number 5 is, what is your biggest disappointment of the year? I'm not going to say much. I don't like this book. Oh, okay. So if you want to know my full fleshed out ranting thoughts, I do have a vlog where I read Dear Henry Love Edith. I will leave it linked down in the description box if you want to check that out. This was my Revive Christian Book Club pick for the month of May, and unfortunately, as much as I was looking forward to a story that was reminiscent of You've Got Mail, a clean Christian romance, this book fell completely flat for me. I did not like anything about it. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like the small town. I didn't like the village people. I didn't like the love story. I didn't feel like this was a Christian romance. I felt like it was more just like maybe a clean romance, but I just did not fall for this at all. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Question number 6 is, what is your biggest surprise of this year? And that is In the Field of Grace by Rachel Fordham. I don't have this book on hand because my mom is actually borrowing it right now, but this is a biblical fiction book based on the book of Ruth in the Bible. I have never thought that I would be a biblical fiction girl. I'm not really drawn to it. I'm like, if I want a Bible story, I'll just read the actual Bible, but I cannot tell you how wonderful Tessa Afshar's writing is. She is truly a gem in the Christian fiction realm. She does such a great job of bringing scripture and bringing God's heart into what she writes. This book really enhanced my Ruth Bible study that I did the month that I read this. I'll go ahead and link that down in the description below too in case you missed it and you are curious to check it out. But man, this story absolutely ripped me to shreds in the best way possible. I laughed, I cried, my heart was warmed. It was just so good. So this was definitely my biggest surprise and a new favorite. Question number 7 is a favorite new to you or debut author, and I have 2 that I want to talk about. The first one I mentioned earlier is Rachel Fordham. So I read The Letter Tree in January. This is my first book of 2024, and it was also my first 5-star read. I'd never read anything by this author before, but I'd heard great things about her, and she writes Christian historical romance. Now, I will say that this isn't heavily Christian. There is like mentions of prayer and stuff in there, but it's not going to be one of those stories that has scripture weaved throughout. But if you're looking for a good, clean romance set in the 1920s in Buffalo, New York, that also involves a zoo and letter writing, if you like You've Got Mail, like this is such... Oh, and Romeo and Juliet, that's another thing, because there's rival shoe companies in this story, and the son and daughter from each, they are the ones who are falling in love. But if this sounds at all good to you, please pick this up. Even if you don't think you like historical romance or Christian romance, please give it a try. This is one of my new favorite books of all time. I'm so excited to read more of Rachel Fordham's books, but I'm also so nervous because I love this one so much and I just want to love them all just as much as I love this one. So Rachel Fordham, even though I've only read one of her books, I definitely think she's a new favorite author. And then another one is Tessa Afshar. This is The Land of Silence, which I'm reading right now, and it follows the woman with the issue of blood from the Bible, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I just really, again, love how she writes biblical fiction and weaves scripture and the Lord's heart into her stories. So these are 2 new favorite authors, and I didn't even think they would be, like, both of these are Christian fiction, so I love that. Question number 8 is, who is your newest fictional crush? Now, I say this lightly because, like, would I, like, pursue these men in real life? I don't know. Probably not. I don't know. And they're also different, but I will say that I love these men in these books. I love the way that they treat their women. I love who they are. I love little quirks about them. I love different elements of their personality. So I have 4 I'm going to mention, and the first one is obviously Dallas Burt from My Phony Valentine. He's a little bit rough around the edges, but you really get to know his heart and what makes him the way that he is. You get to see his trauma, and then you get to see his redemption. And I really love that about him, and through all of it, he really cares for Poppy. Next, I want to talk about Justin from Just for the Summer. I love how sweet this man is. Like, he does really corny things, like sending out date invitations or doing surveys before or after your date, so you know, like, so he knows what you like or what you don't like. And I'm like, is that super realistic? Maybe not, but I would love it if my husband did that. So like, I think that's a really fun quirk. He's not perfect. He, again, is rough around the edges, but aren't we all? Like, don't we all have our flaws? So I just love the way that he pursues, I forgot her name, Emma. I love the way that he pursues Emma, and just all the little things, like of how he cares for her, how he's patient with her. He is just a really good man. Next, we have Boaz from In the Field of Grace by Tessa Afshar, but also from the Bible. But the way that she fleshes out Boaz's character and his heart, and the way that he just shows, like, he is a redeemer of sorts for Ruth, and the way that his whole being is so symbolic of Jesus as a redeemer for us is just so good. Like, the grace that he has and the love that he has, I mean, I don't know, y'all, like, this is top tier man. I'm not finished with this book yet, but I also want to say Ethan from Land of Silence. I'm not gonna lie, I know where this woman is in the Bible when we see her, and so like, I'm not really looking forward to what's gonna happen to Ethan in this story, because I don't have a clue what she's gonna do. But Ethan, I love him. She does such a good job of writing like biblical men, like men that care about their women, and I just love this man. You just need to read these books. If you don't know, you just need to read these books. I'm gonna use this book for the next question too. So question number 9 is your newest favorite character, and I'm gonna say Eliana from the Land of Silence. She is the name of the woman with the issue of blood. Now, in the Bible, we don't really know I don't think we know what her name is. I'm pretty sure we don't know what her name is. But in this book, she is named Eliana, and I love her character. She is so strong. Like, she is already in this story, and I'm only 126 pages in, but already she has gone through so much. And you can see like the cracks in her armor, but she is so strong and she perseveres through so much. And I know so much more is going to happen to her. But I just love her character. I love who she is and what she represents. And I'm going to love seeing like how much closer she draws near to the Lord. And I don't know. I'm so excited. I just love her character. Question number 10 is a book that made you cry. And while I have had a few, the one that made me cry the most is actually an Audible original. Yeah. I was like, did I say audiobook original or Audible original? And it is an audiobook. It's The Forgotten Chapter by Pam Jenoff. This is a historical fiction short story. If you are looking for a quick audiobook to read, I highly recommend this one. I don't even honestly remember what it was about because I read it in one sitting and it was super fast, but I love the story. It's a love story. I think it takes place around World War II, and I sobbed. That's all you need to know. Question number 11 is a book that made you happy, and this whole series just always makes me happy, and that is Murders and Metaphors by Amanda Flower. This is the third book in the Magical Bookshop Mystery Series. This book follows our main character, Violet, and her grandma Daisy, and they own a magical bookshop in Cascade Springs, which is a small town not too far from Niagara Falls. This town and these characters just honestly feel like home to me. Every time I get to revisit them, it just makes me so happy. This is definitely a story I could live in, minus the murders, of course, but yeah, it's definitely a comfort read, and it always makes me happy to be back with these characters in Cascade Springs. Question number 12 is the most beautiful book you've received or bought so far this year. So this was actually meant to be, okay, so it was like a Christmas gift, but then it was supposed to be for later this year, then it came sooner than expected. So my husband decided to give it to me early because I already knew it was in the box. And that is this beautiful edition of Coraline by Neil Gaiman. If you don't know, Coraline is one of my favorite spooky middle grade stories. And I loved the movie. I fell in love with it first, and then I went back and read the book, and I do still think I prefer the movie because it really expounded upon the story. But this story is just always going to have a special place in my heart. So this edition is from, I think it's LitJoy. Yeah, so this is a LitJoy special edition. So this is the, I don't know if this is going to focus, so I apologize if it doesn't. But this is the front cover, and then this is the back cover. And then the spine is like sprayed and stenciled. I don't know if this is going to focus or not, so I apologize if it doesn't. But it is sprayed and stenciled. And then you have end pages in the front before she goes into the door because it's bricked up. And then you have after it's open and she can go through to the other side. And then there's also illustrations throughout, as well as a ribbon bookmark. So there's just like a lot. This book has a lot going for it. I'll just say that. I love the artist for this. I don't even know who it is. Let me see if I can figure out. Illustrations by Sony Alcorn Hinder, if I said that correctly. But this is definitely the most beautiful book that I own to date. Question number 13 is, what books do you still need to read before the end of the year? And for this, I'm going to use my 12 books by 12 friends. So in my bullet journal / reading journal, I have listed 12 books that I had 12 different friends select for me this year to read, and I'm really proud of myself with how far I've gotten. In years past, I've tried to do, like last year I did 23 books for 2023 or 22 books for 2022, but that number is going to steadily grow, and I do not want to commit to 24 books in 2024 or any other years. That's just too big of a number. So I think one book a month is good, and so far this year, of the 12 books, I have read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I rated 4 of them, and I DNF'd 1 of them. So I am like 1 book behind track, but I think I'm doing pretty good. So of these books that I still have left to read, I have Vinyl Resting Place by Olivia Black, which is a cozy mystery. And then I have Green Glass House by Kate Milford, which is a Christmassy or wintry middle grade mystery, and I did read this a couple of years ago and got 132 pages in, but I never continued with the story, so I need to reread the first part and then continue on. Then I have Inkheart by Cornelia Funk, which is a fantasy middle grade classic. Then I have When in Rome by Sarah Adams, Just Don't Fall by Emma St. Clair, A Voice in the Wind by Francine Rivers, and I forgot to grab this one off my shelf, but I also have Hind's Feet on High Places by Hannah Hernard, maybe? Let's see if I can read it. Yeah, Hannah Hernard. So those are the books that I have left. The 7 books that I have left to read by the end of this year. Those are like the top priority. Now, I do have some others that I want to read. So I read Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez this year, and last year I read Part of Your World, but I skipped the book in the middle. So I do have Yours Truly. I don't know if I'm going to like it. The other 2 books were 5 stars for me, so I kind of want to read this one just to round it out, and hopefully it'll be a 5. But I would like to get to Yours Truly before the end of the year. And like I mentioned earlier, Rachel Fordham is an author that I really want to read more from. I think she can be a new favorite. So I do have Where the Road Bends on my TBR for June, so hopefully I'll get to it the end of this month, and then I'll also have The Hope of Azure Springs. So I really want to read more Rachel Fordham, so hopefully I'll get to those by the end of the year. But other than that, it's kind of just whatever tickles my fancy. And I think that's going to be it for the mid-year book freakout tag. I went through all the questions. I kind of talked a little bit about goals for this year, which, like I said, I don't have a ton. It's basically a Goodreads goal and then 12 books by 12 friends. But I think I'm doing a pretty good job. I've definitely found some books that I've really loved and enjoyed, and hopefully I will find many more before the end of this year. If you made it this far in the video, let me know down in the comments below, number 1, if you are doing the mid-year book freakout tag, and if that's up on your channel, let me know so I can check that out, because I always love watching these. And then number 2, if you're not going to do the mid-year book freakout tag, then could you answer a couple questions for me down in the comments? You could answer all of these. I will leave them down in the description box if you want to. But if you don't want to, tell me what your favorite book that you've read so far this year was, and your biggest disappointment of the year. You can answer those 2 questions, or either one, or whichever one you want to answer. But please do that. And if you don't have anything else to say and you just want to leave a comment for support, go ahead and leave a sunshine emoji, because I'm so glad that it is so much closer to summer now. I think the 20th of this month is going to be summertime. So it's already summer in my heart. It's basically already summer for all of us, but I'm so happy it's summer. So please leave me some sunshine down in my comments. And that is going to be it for today's video. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye, friends.